Everything my car needed to fix the steering problem. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, I wanted to reveal everything that was wrong with my car to fix the steering. Now, for those of you that don't want to wait and are just curious what this cost me, I'll tell you right now. So if you don't want to know and you want to listen to the entire video first, that's fine. You can skip ahead 30 seconds or so, but all of this combined was $3,680, I believe, total. But let me go through this and explain it to you guys at length. So starting about probably 5-6 weeks ago, I noticed that as I would be driving my car, I'd be driving and I'd go to turn and it'd suddenly get harder to turn. And I thought, well, that's weird. I also noticed that the lane departure, I would get near the line, and instead of it correcting to move me back in, it would kind of want to stick to the line, and it wanted to sort of, and I'd have to tell it to get back to the middle of the lane. It was really odd. And I had numerous people drive the car. They all noticed the same issue. So I brought it into Tesla, and they replaced this steering column position sensor. Some kid riding around in a mini bike out back. They replaced the steering column position sensor. It was $400 and some, and that completely solved the problem for about 10 days. And then the problem came back. And interestingly, the first time the problem occurred was the day after I got a software update. Now that's important. Keep that in the back of your mind. So then they replaced this position sensor, and it worked great for, I think it was 10 or 11 days. And then I got a software update, and that morning after the software update, the problem recurred. So I brought it in. Then they replaced this. This is the forward body control module, in case you're curious what it looks like. So they said that the issue with this forward body control module, this is what supplies the steering rack with power. They said that there were faults in the steering position sensor was throwing faults that they were able to find when they scanned the data, and this forward body control module was throwing faults, but also it's supposed to supply the steering rack with 14 volts. However, it was only supplying the steering rack with 9 volts. So they said, we know it's bad, we'll change it. That was $777. And that did not cure my steering problem, but it drastically reduced it. It went from, and I had to push, to, oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah, I can feel it. It was still there, but not nearly as obtrusive, I think, because the forward body control module was finally outputting the correct voltage to the steering rack. Now, so I brought the car back in, and Tesla has been wonderful in dealing with this, I gotta tell you. I brought it back in, and they said, well, you know, the next step is the steering rack. I said, I know. And they said it's $3,600 and some, basically $3,700 to put a rack in the car. Again, keep that number in mind. I said, yeah. So they said, well, bring the car in and we'll do what we can. So they had the car for over 3 weeks. And I paid the technician for an hour of time to ride with me, because it wouldn't always do it, and I had a hard time explaining what was going on with it. And he's like, well, maybe it's your perception. I mean, he was trying to figure out what was going on. And so we're in the car, and it took about 40 minutes of him driving with me in the passenger seat, and he's driving and driving, and all of a sudden he goes, oh, there it is. Yeah, I felt it. You know, he goes, all right, let's go back. So we're going back, and oh, there it is. And oh, yeah, I see in mid-corner, you could let go of the wheel, and the wheel would stay there. It wouldn't self-correct. He's like, yep. I felt it. I know what you're talking about. You're not crazy. There's an issue. So they brought it back in, and he said, before we put a steering rack in this thing, I want to check everything that I can. And he said, do I have your permission to drive this thing to and from work? He lives probably an hour drive away from work. I said, sure. I said, actually, my wife asked, you know, would it be possible for them to have the guy just drive it home? That's something mechanics used to do many years ago. And he said, yeah, let me live with it and see what I can do. Well, they reached out to me and said, well, good news and bad news. The good news is you don't need a steering rack. They said, we put a new steering rack in and the problem's still there. So we put your old steering rack back in. And I said, okay, I guess good news. So, but then they had it for a while, and it, days became weeks, and finally I got a phone call over the weekend, and they said, well, you did indeed need a steering rack. And and I said, all right, well, can I talk to the technician? Not that I doubted it, but I'm a technical person, and I'm a technician. I service things for a living. I service in-home appliances for a living, and I was curious, I want to know about this. So I went in and talked to the technician, and he said, Matt, this was a big deal. This was a very big deal. What he had to do was, on the center screen in the car, he put the car in a service mode and then drive the car, and every time the steering would fault, he would timestamp it on that screen in service mode. So he would timestamp it and then drive, oh, it's doing it again, timestamp it, and then he was communicating with Tesla corporate, and they were looking over all the CAN data and at those timestamps. And he said, Matt, this was a big deal. He said, everything that we found with the car, there was missing CAN data between modules. We had faults coming from the power steering rack, the computer in the power steering rack. He said, and we found several pins in the gang connectors on the wire harness that needed to be corrected. He said, we started correcting one thing at a time, the simple stuff first. Let's fix the pins. Let's try and get the CAN data restored. Let's do everything. He said, I tried everything, and with the new rack, with the old rack, he said the only way it would work was fixing all the CAN data and putting a new rack in it. And he said, drove it for whatever, a couple hours, and the problem's gone. So quite the big situation. Now, I have a theory as to what's going on. And I asked the technician, I said, what would have caused this? I mean, it's a lot of parts to need. He said, it's hard to say. I can tell you guys that in conversations with him while we were test driving the car together and that, he said that there are multiple hardware revisions from my car to the newer Model 3s. He said, my VIN number is low 9,300s, and there's hundreds of thousands of these cars out there now. He said, Tesla has updated the hardware, so many revisions at this point, that my car is an early car. I kind of knew that going into it, that I was buying a newly designed item. He said, and the fact that it's got 110,000 miles on it. He said, there aren't very many Model 3s out there with so many miles. So he said, I'm not sure what caused it, but we live in northern Illinois. There's a lot of salt on the roads. He pointed out corrosion at grounding points on the module, and he said, we live in an area with corrosion. You've got high miles on your car. It's an early VIN, and it's just, there's a lot of contributors to it. So I got to tell you though, Tesla has been wonderful to deal with. So let me explain the billing process in this. So again, it was $440 some for the steering position sensor, $777 for the forward body control module, and the rack was supposed to be $3,600 and something, $3,680 I think, just shy of $3,700. I ended up paying $3,700 or less than $3,700 total. So I want to say hello to John from Tesla. He's my service advisor. John has actually relocated to a different Tesla store in another state. And when they had gone through all of this hassle, just countless hours of time they put into diagnosing this, they finally reached out to John and asked, hey, how much should we charge Shoemaker for this? So he basically told them to take care of me on it, and basically what it boils down to is I paid full price for a steering rack, and that's it. They haven't said these words to me, but it's almost as though they credited back the position sensor, the body control module, and didn't charge me anything for all of that diagnostic time. Because partly, I think, because they wanted to figure this out. The technician told me, he said, I was determined to get this done. He said, we want to know what's wrong with your car, and this is also accumulated knowledge that they now have for future potential Model 3 issues. And so they really took care of me. And I know there's going to be people in the comment section that are going to say it's because of your YouTube channel that they took care of you. And maybe so. That might be the case. I'm definitely open to that as a possibility. But for whatever reason, they really, really treated me well. They kept me apprised of what was going on with the car. And I mean, I love my car. I really wanted it back. I wanted it to work. And we did discuss, I know people are going to ask in the comments section about my aftermarket wheels and tires and the fact that the car has been lowered in the suspension. And the tech mentioned a couple things to me. He said, Matt, he said, if you put stock 18-inch wheels and tires on it, which is one thing they did, he said the steering is noticeably lighter. He mentioned that under deceleration with my aftermarket wheels and tires, the steering is a little bit heavier. He said with stock 18-inch wheels and the Eco tires that the car came with, the steering is light under acceleration, under cruising, and under braking. Whereas with my aftermarket 20s, the steering is very light under acceleration, pretty light under cruising, and under braking, you can notice it's not much. A couple percent, 1 or 2% more stiffness under braking. And he said normally that wouldn't be the case with a Tesla. I guess they programmed that out or something. But so he said what he called the scrub radius is different on my wheels and tires than what the car was designed for. And I asked, I said, you know, this happened right after a couple of software updates. Could the software updates have contributed? He said no, all these components were bad, and he explained very thoroughly to me the faults that they found with each component, why they replaced them as they did. He said, however, I can tell you that with each software update, Tesla is honing in more and more on all of the data related to the traction, what's going on with the tires and all that. Teslas are very advanced cars, and I'm going to make an assumption here. I'm going to make a guess on this, and I could be way off base. Juan, the technician, if you're watching this, I apologize if I'm wrong, but as a tech myself, I'm kind of running under the assumption that every software update is looking more closely at the contact patch and how it's behaving. And I think maybe because Tesla is doing away with the radar, my car does have a radar, but they're going without it, so it's visual only for the autopilot. And I think my theory is that Tesla might be making things in the car more sensitive regarding the contact patch of the tires and how the car is reading that, because they have to know how to read, is it wet, is it icy, or whatever for the autopilot. Totally a guess on my part. I could be way off base. But I'm wondering, because again, each time this problem occurred, it was right after a software update, and which also made me question, did I need these components? So we talked at length, and again, he explained low voltage coming from the body control module, as well as faults coming from it, faults coming from the position sensor, and faults coming from the rack. Also, if the rack was getting low voltage, 9 volts from the forward body control module instead of 14 volts, that means that it's going to run harder, it's going to draw more amperage, and that's hard on it. Plus, the thing has 110,000 miles on it. So, I don't know. So he, yeah, I think that over time, as the position sensor and the control module and the steering rack were aging and starting to have issues and throw faults, I think that the car's systems were able to compensate and eventually couldn't compensate any further. And so at any rate, this is what we're looking at. I also want to address the elephant in the room, and that is that there are people that are going to say, see, Teslas are unreliable, they're pieces of crap. Well, as far as the unreliability aspect goes, I am obviously a Tesla fanboy. I love my car. I will say that this is the most money I've ever put into one repair before on any car I've owned. But other cars that I've owned, I've had to do more repairs to the cars before I've hit this point, more in number of repairs, and each of those were much smaller. And if you look at the total, because of this repair, I have now officially put more money in service work into my Tesla than I put into my Ford C-Max hybrid before this car. But then if you look at the gas savings that I've had, I mean, not even including my YouTube channel and the swiveling screen mount kits, all the money that's made, just looking at the gas savings, this car is still money ahead versus the C-Max hybrid that I had, which was half the price car versus this. So now, and I don't want to make excuses. Is this a big repair? It absolutely is. And I think Tesla realizes that, and I think that's a big part of the reason why they took such good care of me. But again, at 110,000 miles, it's not like they really owe me anything. And it's not that the car owes me anything. All of those miles have been spent with a bunch of equipment. The front trunk, the rear trunk have always been full of equipment, and usually the back seat, and much of its life with myself and a passenger in the passenger seat as well. So this car is laden down with weight all the time. I don't know. I mean, those that will say that, see, this proves Teslas are unreliable. I will concede that, yeah, there's no way around the fact that it needed a lot of work. If I wanted to hide that, I wouldn't shoot this video. But I want to be real with you guys about the realities of owning a Tesla. Again, mine's an early car. The tech told me that the new Model 3s are numerous hardware revisions newer than my car. Not including the fact that the Model 3s now have heat pumps and heated steering wheels and double pane glass and all of that. So my car is definitely an early car, but my car is in mint visual condition. I also recently spent $1,200 fixing the rocker panels. They were just getting rock chipped and stuff. So I had the paint stripped down, had them repainted and chip guarded all along the bottoms of the car. I keep my car as mint as possible. And so I wanted it fixed right. So a lot to chew on, a lot to talk about, I realize that, but it's something that I wanted to, again, be as upfront with you guys as I can be. So once again, $3,700 total, and I just put $1,200 into, but I chose to fix the rocker panels just to keep the car looking pretty. So I put $5,000 of work into this car recently, and absolutely love it. Love this car. And I'm considering getting a brand new performance Model 3, depending on the trade-in value that they tell me of my car. Not because I'm scared of it and it's unreliable now, but just the performance 3s have gone down in price, and we're approaching potentially the president signing the EV tax bill, which would give $10,000 off. And if I can get a good trade-in value on my car, I could theoretically step from my car into a performance Model 3 with a lower car payment than I have now. So we'll see how that goes. If I choose to do that, I'll let you guys know. Maybe I'd even sell my car on the open market. I don't know. It depends on what Tesla offers me. But that's where we're at for today. So yeah, position sensor, forward body control module, and steering rack. Kind of a lot of work, but it is driving great at this point. So I'm sure you guys are going to have a ton of questions. Go ahead and leave them in the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer whatever I can. If you have a swiveling screen mount kit on order, we are shipping the new Atlas mounts. I had to wait for the thumbs up from the patent attorney. I have the thumbs up. We have a bunch of them manufactured, so those will begin shipping this week. And I hired somebody to help me both Wednesdays and Saturdays for that business. So screen mount kits are shipping, but that's where we're at. So anyway, again, leave a comment if you have a comment or question in the comments section below. And as always, stay charged. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And it's good to be back. It's good to have my car back. And yeah, take it easy now. Bye-bye.